Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Night Fright. If you enjoy creepy and unsettling real-life horror stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel reach more brave listeners like you. Now, switch off the lights, put on your earbuds, and let's begin. This story was sent to me by a subscriber named Caleb. He said this really happened to him during the pandemic, and he still doesn't know who was out there in the woods that night or why they followed him. This happened in 2020, right when the world was starting to shut down. COVID was locking everything down. People were staying inside, and I took that as a rare chance to do the opposite. I'm a backpacker and camper, always looking for some quiet in nature. And honestly, after what happened to me the year before, I needed it more than ever. Without going into too much detail, ID made a mistake at work in 2019. A financial mistake that cost a lot of people a lot of money. I lost my job, my phone number, had to move apartments. And even after all that, I was getting anonymous calls and texts, some of them threatening. Eventually, they faded away. But the damage had been done. I felt like I was carrying the weight of that mistake everywhere. I needed to reset. So I packed up my gear and drove out to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. I was heading to this creek I'd camped near once before. It was early spring, still snow on the ground, but thin and crunchy underfoot. Parked my truck, hiked up alone, didn't see another soul. I guess everyone was taking the stay-home orders seriously, and it was still cold enough to scare off casual hikers. I found a quiet spot off the path near the creek and pitched my tent. I chopped some wood, started a small fire, and cooked a few sausages on my little camp stove. I pulled out a paperback, started reading beside the fire, and when dusk hit, I rolled a joint and lit up. That's when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe my sister checking in. But when I saw the messages, my heart dropped. They were from an unknown number, area code 203. I looked it up later. Connecticut. The first text said, "How's your camping going, buddy?" Second text, "It's beautiful out here." Third, "I see why you came up here." I froze. The only people who knew where I was were me. And maybe the gas station clerk where I filled up. My first instinct was to type back, "Who is this?" But I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever it was, they were close. Too close. The weed was making it worse. I was paranoid, spinning. I stood up, looked around, did a full turn scanning the trees and brush. Nothing. Still, I dug into my pack and pulled out my handgun. I never thought I'd need it, but it felt better having it in my hand than out of reach. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the snow. I didn't put it out like I normally would have before bed. I couldn't bring myself to turn off the only light in the dark. I crawled into my tent, zipped it up, and lay there, watching my phone. No new messages, no movement outside, just the occasional wind gust rustling the trees. I tried to distract myself, read, watch YouTube, anything. I put on a true crime video, not the best idea in hindsight. Then another buzz. A single message. Doesn't matter anymore. That was it. I replied, "How do you know I'm camping?" No reply. I sat there for what felt like an hour. Phone in one hand, gun in the other. I heard nothing. But the silence didn't comfort me. It felt suffocating. Then, crunch, footsteps, clear as day. Slow, deliberate, right outside my tent. I didn't breathe. I just listened. The footsteps stopped maybe 6 feet from me, and then flash. A sudden burst of light, like someone took a picture. The walls of my tent lit up, and then went dark again. The footsteps retreated, slowly, fading into the woods. My phone vibrated. one new message. It was a photo of my tent, followed by one last text. Have a good night's sleep. Something in me snapped. I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just acting. I unzipped the tent, raised my gun, and fired 2 warning shots straight into the sky. A split second later, I heard fast footsteps crunching the snow. Running. Disappearing. I screamed into the trees, shouted threats, told them I was armed, that I wasn't afraid. Then I ducked back into my tent and sat with the gun in my lap for what must have been hours. But nothing happened after that. No more footsteps. No more messages. When I finally drifted off, it was pure exhaustion, not peace. The next morning, when the sun came up, I stepped outside. No sign of anyone. Just faint boot prints leading off into the trees. I packed up and hiked out fast. Didn't even bother making breakfast. It's been 5 years since then. I haven't gotten another text. I haven't gone camping alone either. I don't know who it was. Someone from my past? A random stalker? Or maybe just a twisted prankster. But whoever it was, they knew where I was. And they were standing only a few feet away from me, watching me through the fabric of my tent. And that will never leave me. This story was sent to me by a listener named Brandon. He told me this happened to him during a family camping trip up north. And what they heard outside their tent is something none of them have ever forgotten. When I was a kid, my family had this yearly tradition. Every October, we'd drive up to northern Michigan for a weekend getaway. My Uncle Jim owned a big piece of land there, about 4 acres, and the house on the property was this old, creaky, multi-bedroom place that could sleep a dozen people easy. It had 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and always felt like a little adventure waiting to happen. The sleeping arrangements were always the same. My brother, sister, and I took one of the kids' rooms, and our 4 cousins took the other. The adults split the remaining bedrooms. And every year, my Uncle Jim, the real outdoorsman of the family, would tell us stories about hunting trips, camping in the deep woods, and wild animals he'd encountered. He had this grizzled voice and the kind of stories that could either make you laugh or keep you awake at night. Now, part of his land was dense forest. You'd look out from the back porch and see nothing but trees for miles. He demarked the edge of his property with red spray paint on the tree trunks. Everything beyond that was county-owned forest land. That year, I was 13, and my cousins Jake and Joe were about 10 and 9. My younger brother Adam was also 10. The 4 of us came up with the brilliant idea at lunch one day that we wanted to camp out in the woods by ourselves that night. No adults, no help, just us boys and the trees. Uncle Jim and my dad were a few drinks in, so they immediately said yes. Our moms, not so much, but they didn't exactly forbid it either, so we took that as permission. That afternoon, my dad and Uncle Jim helped us carry a huge tent out into the forest, past the red-marked trees, into this small clearing surrounded by tall pines and thick underbrush. There was a layer of soft green moss that made the ground feel like a mattress. My uncle said it was a deer bed, the kind of place deer come to rest. He said it was the perfect place for a campsite, and that he'd even used it before. We helped set up the tent, a massive canvas thing that could easily fit the 4 of us. And then we brought out our sleeping bags and flashlights. Everything was ready before sunset. That evening, we ate dinner with our family, played around outside until it got dark. And then, right around 9:00 p.m., our dads walked us back out into the forest with the last of our gear. We each had flashlights and extra blankets, and I even brought a deck of Uno cards to help pass the time. The moment our dads left, the woods felt different. Not scary, exactly, but definitely quieter than before. We could no longer see the lights from the house. We were that far in. We turned on all our flashlights and placed them in a circle inside the tent like a little lantern ring. It actually felt pretty cozy. We sat cross-legged in a circle and played Uno, just joking around, trying to pretend we weren't nervous being out there alone. Then we heard it. A scream. Not like a short yelp or a coyote howling. This was a full-blown scream. A high-pitched woman's scream echoing somewhere out in the forest. We froze. Every one of us just looked at each other like, "Did you hear that too?" My cousin Joe's face turned pale, and I remember quickly saying, "It's probably just a fox. They scream like that. It's normal." And honestly, I thought I was right. That calmed everyone down. We went back to our game. I was actually winning every round, which helped distract from the tension. But then it happened again, louder this time, closer. That second scream didn't sound like a fox. It didn't sound like any animal I'd ever heard. It sounded like a person, a woman, terrified and hurt. We all went silent again. Even I was starting to freak out now. Joe looked like he was about to cry. I told everyone to turn off their flashlights. We all crawled into our sleeping bags and lay there in the dark, whispering about what it could be. Nobody wanted to go outside, running through the dark forest, possibly toward that sound. It felt insane. Staying hidden inside the tent, even though it was just fabric, felt safer somehow. We were just starting to calm down again when it happened. Someone, or something, came running toward the tent. We heard footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps crunching through leaves and twigs, right up to us, and then they stopped just outside the tent. And then, the scream. That same horrific, high-pitched scream. But this time, it was right outside the tent. And then the tent started shaking, like someone was grabbing and pushing the sides, violently. We all lost it. Jake and Joe were screaming. My brother and I were shouting back, "Get away! We're calling the cops." I unzipped the flap and bolted. One by one, we all ran, flashlights bouncing, breath coming out in puffs, crashing through the woods toward the house. We didn't even look behind us. It was pure terror. We ran screaming the entire way, and when we burst out of the trees and onto the lawn, our whole family was already outside, wide-eyed and panicked. They heard everything. But here's the part that haunts me most. When we explained what happened, I looked around and realized something. My sister and my two girl cousins weren't outside. They were inside, in bed, asleep. We accused our dads of setting up a prank, sending one of the girls to mess with us. But they swore they didn't, and the girls confirmed they hadn't left the house. So then, who was it? Who screamed? Who shook the tent? My dad and Uncle Jim grabbed their rifles and went out into the woods. They didn't find anyone. Nothing. The next day, we went back and packed up the tent. And that was the last time we ever camped out in those woods. After dark, we didn't even play outside anymore. Whatever was out there that night, whatever was screaming and running at us, wasn't anyone we knew. And we still don't have an explanation. This story was sent to me by Eric Thompson. I know this might sound like something out of a horror movie, but everything I'm about to share actually happened. Even now, 2 years later, I get chills just thinking about it. If you told me this story, I probably wouldn't believe you either, but I lived it. And I swear to you, every single word is true. Back in 2023, my dad and I took a weekend trip to one of our favorite camping spots. It was way out in the country, somewhere deep in the Pacific Northwest, remote enough that cell service barely worked, but still official enough to have hiking trails, a few zip lines, and even a ranger station. The place had some history too, old Native American lands, according to one of the info signs. That kind of thing always fascinated me. We figured it'd be a great way to get out of our heads and unplug for a few days. The first night, that was absolutely perfect. There were a few other campers scattered around the sites, families roasting marshmallows, kids laughing, distant guitar strumming, the kind of peaceful atmosphere you go camping for. My dad and I grilled some hot dogs, drank a couple of beers, and talked with a few other campers around a shared fire ring. It felt safe, relaxing, like the world had slowed down just enough for us to breathe again. But the second night, that's when everything changed. We stopped by the front office earlier that day to grab some water and snacks. The park staff casually mentioned that all the other campers had checked out. Apparently, we were the only ones left. At first, we were stoked. I mean, having the entire campground to ourselves? That sounded like a dream. No screaming kids, no snoring neighbors, no dogs barking at squirrels all night. Just us and the trees. So we went about our day, did a little hiking, caught a few fish at the river, even sat on some boulders and listened to a horror podcast for a laugh, leaning into the creepy vibe, you know. We thought it was funny at the time. That kind of thrill that comes with isolation. It hadn't turned to fear yet. Not yet. By the time sunset rolled in, we were tired in that good way. Our muscles ached, our bellies were full, our minds calm. We decided to swing by the ranger center one more time to charge our phones before calling it a night. As we walked back to our site, though, something shifted. The woods felt different. It's hard to explain, like the sky didn't want to go dark. It had this strange reddish-blue tint, like the world was paused between day and night. The trees looked taller somehow. The air felt thick, heavy. My dad turned to me at one point and said, "Doesn't this feel weird to you? Like a dream or something?" And he was right. It did. We got back to our site and lit the fire again. Didn't talk much after that. Neither of us had to say it. We both felt off. But instead of panicking, we just tried to make it normal. Roast some s'mores. Play music on a Bluetooth speaker. Even passed a joint between us. Anything to keep the uneasiness away. But once the sun dipped fully below the tree line and the forest became pitch black, the fear came back. At around 9 p.m., we heard the first bang. It sounded like a tree falling, deep, sudden, and loud, but it didn't make sense. There'd been no wind, no cracking branches beforehand, just a single thunderous impact from somewhere near the river, about 100 yards off. We grabbed our flashlights and aimed them toward the sound, but there was nothing. Just darkness. No eyes reflecting the light, no rustling leaves, no movement at all. We laughed nervously, tried to brush it off. Maybe Bigfoot, my dad joked. I managed to chuckle, but it didn't feel funny. A few minutes passed, then another bang. Louder, closer, still nothing when we shined our lights. Then a third, even closer. It was circling us. I was standing now, flashlight gripped so tightly, my knuckles ached. My dad's eyes were wide, not curious, but scared. "Get in the tent," he said. Now, we dumped the last of our firewood onto the flames, hoping it'd buy us some safety, and then scrambled inside the tent, zipping it shut behind us. I dropped flat onto my sleeping bag, heart pounding. My dad followed, slower, crouching at the entrance. That's when it happened. The loudest bang yet, maybe 20 feet away, shook the ground beneath us. My dad froze, staring out into the darkness. "Eric," he whispered, "it's standing there." "What's standing there?" I whispered back. "I don't know," he said. "It's like a wall of black. It's not moving, but it's not. It's not right." He backed into the tent and grabbed the only weapon we had, a little pocket knife. Completely useless, but I guess it felt better than nothing. Then came the vibration. It started low, like a hum, but it wasn't just noise. It was something we felt, like it was inside our chest, our bones. It made my eyes water, made my breath catch. My dad whispered, "You hear that?" I couldn't even speak. I just nodded. Then a new sound, not human, not animal. It was this, wet, clicking growl, deep and unnatural, like something crawling across a different dimension. The closest thing I can compare it to is the sound the Demogorgon makes in Stranger Things, but real, horribly real. We stayed frozen. I buried myself beneath my sleeping bag, refusing to look out the mesh window beside me. My dad sat by the zipper, hand trembling on that tiny knife. Neither of us moved. Neither of us breathed. And then everything went black.